Well, my first memory of clay was at school. I was probably about 11, and we had to walk across a ploughed field. And I saw in the corner of the field this furrow that was bright yellow. So I grabbed a bit. It was quite soft. It had only just been done and been raining, obviously. So I picked a bit, and I had it in my hand all day. And I just made a ball, and it got more and more cracked, and then it fell apart. But it's interesting because that memory has remained with me quite sharply, even though from that day onwards I never even thought about it. The thing that responds to pots is the thing that you want to keep alive. So if you have these feelings for something, you want other people to share what you love about the craft to that person. Yesterday we opened the kiln, and to be honest, it's probably one of the best firings I've ever had. Virtually everything came out top quality. It was just extraordinary. You work for however long you work to fill your kiln. I mean, I usually make enough to have 2 or 3 firings. And all the time you're making these, you have a vision in your head, because the quality, the depth, the colour, the form, and all these things are what you want to communicate. You hope that you've got it just about right, and you know when it's top quality, you know that that has the potential to communicate to other people and give them that enrichment that you yourself feel. And I can remember the story that Michael Cardew told, which made a great impression on me. He was going to some remote pottery village in Africa. It was after a long, tiring day on the back of a donkey, and he tripped and fell over and smashed a big African pot. But then he heard in the background these women clapping hands, and he looked round and they were swaying. It was all very lovely musical, and they were singing. And he said to his person, his guide and interpreter, he said, "What on earth are they doing? Why are they singing? I've just broken a wonderful big pot." And they said, "Because they can make another one." And they're absolutely delighted. And at that moment he knew that the spirit of making was far more important to keep alive. And the pot represents that. There was something in me that was, I don't know, it's a slight frustration. And one Christmas I sat down, or just after Christmas, I sat down with about 30 lumps of clay by the wheel, and I threw them on the wheel, and I don't know what the hell I was going to make, and I started making things. And some of them were dreadful, but I learned quite a lot about what I wanted to do, and what I wanted to, how I wanted to say things in slightly different ways. And people want things that are special to them, or of high quality, or that particularly enrich them. Like in Japan, for example, people don't buy a 3-piece suite and spend 700, 800 quid on a 3-piece suite. They spend 700 or 800 quid on a pot, because it's more important to them than a 3-piece suite. Now, we don't have quite that in our culture, but it's coming. And our people are beginning to appreciate the qualities that go into the making of pots. Yeah, it's interesting. When I first started potting, you know, you'd make a pot, and here you have this sort of, now what do I do with it? Where the hell, you know? And it occurred to me that in most countries there was a very rich symbology at one time of marks that meant something to people, whether it's to do with harvest, fertility, and so on and so forth. And nowadays, what have we got? Pound note? That's it. I mean, you know, or the dollar. We don't have marks. We don't have symbols. So I was thinking, okay, well, I want the marks to have some meaning for me. The first decoration I ever did, and it's a bowl, and what I did was to get a distemper brush and some local clay, dark slip, and I just went wavy round the pot. And the reason I did that is because I lived near the South Downs, and the South Downs were these sort of feminine rolling hills. So I did the same. And that was it, because that was my surrounding. I think the earliest pots were people made baskets. They went to the river, they lined the baskets with clay, they filled it with water and brought the water back to their little huts. And one day, somebody smoking an early cigarette burnt down their hut, and what was left standing was this pot with wicker marks around it. But I may be wrong, but that's how I think pots started. And maybe that's how marks started, you know, because a lot of early pots seem to have that type of mark on. The pressure of modern life tends to close us down. Because we're so busy, and I love that word, busyness, business tends to close us down if we don't have the skills to open ourselves up. If that can quieten down, then you begin to see things in a way which is very quiet, but relates to your inner vitality rather than your intellectual thought process, which can be very deadening. You have these little realizations, you know, little insights into something. And I remember I was teaching in Carlisle, and I was going in, you know, had to get in at 9 o'clock in the morning, and I was driving in through the town, and there's this dreadful 1950s council building. And I was driving past one morning, and I actually noticed that my chest dropped inwards. I thought, that's interesting, what's going on here, you know? And then a bit later on, I was thinking, hang on a minute, when you're inspired, you go, your chest rises. And why does it rise? Because you inspire, you take in breath, and that's where the word comes from. And I started to think that an awful lot of things in our modern world, the plastics and the tinsel-y stuff, and they're all sort of, they don't lift, they're not enriching and enlifting and enlivening, they're actually deadening. I can remember reading, I think, Brancusi in his old age, up in some flat in Paris, and somebody said, come on, let's go for a walk. He said, no, I can't go for a walk. I said, one tree's enough for me. He said, this glass of water's enough for me. I mean, look at the beauty of this glass of water. So here's someone whose mind was just fully open to the immediacy of beauty. The reason why I've sort of got into using materials, not necessarily local, but from different places I've lived, I want a relationship with the materials I'm using. I want to have it's like, you know, like making marks and decoration. You need some sort of personal connection, at least I do. And I can remember, you know, asking for feldspar. I didn't even know what feldspar was and all these things initially. And they'd arrive on a lorry in a bag, and you'd open it up, and you'd get your glaze book out, which is written by somebody else, and you'd make up these things. And I'm thinking, hang on a minute, where do these things come from, you know? And you'd be driving around, and you'd see, oh, there's a quarry there. I wonder what that does. This one at Moon's Hill produces basalt, which was a magma intrusion about 425 million years ago. And which is extraordinary, isn't it? I mean, you can actually take this material and put it in a glaze and reform it. But once you've got a material which is local, then you feel you want to get the best from it, and rather than have no acquaintance with something from a bag. You know, as you get to know something, it increases in depth. It's not just an acquaintance. It's a deepening of a friendship. Could you call it a friendship? Certainly a relationship with materials. I'm not sure you become friendly with materials, but certainly you deepen your relationship. And if you've got a granite dust, you want to get the best you can from that. Absolutely the best you can. So you play around with it. Then your glazes become yours. And the reason why anything by any artist becomes theirs is because all they have to go on is the choices. You know, whether you're throwing a pot on the wheel, whether you're making a glaze, the glaze comes out the kiln and think, oh, I like that. That's me. Now another potter might come along and say, no, I don't like that, I like that one. So your character of your work develops through your choice of form, colour, depth, all those things which make up, which express your character, express your vitality through your character. It's all about choice. These are the main tools I use for making pots on this wheel here. So this is just metal strapping, which are usually around, say, brick pallets in a builder's yard, and they just chuck the metal away into a skip. This is a throwing rib, which is for smoothing, if I need to smooth the side of a pot or go down to the base, take out some of the clay. But I find it very useful. And the edge stays pretty sharp because bamboo is a tough old material. These tend to be used at leather hard stage, and this is a sort of type of sash cording, which you can either roll on to give a sort of background marking, or if you bend it, you can make little ears of corn. This is a piece of macrame, or macrame. Somebody gave me a book on this, and I made this little thing which makes a nice pattern on the side, particularly on a faceted pot. You can do that on the side. One of my favourite little tools that was given to me by my daughter when she was about 8, she was given a cookery set, and this is a little meat tenderizer. And being a vegetarian family, so she said she didn't want it, so she gave it to me and said, you could have it for your toolbox, Dad, you know. So I thought, all right, I'll have it in my toolbox. I find it very useful, either as in a diamond shape, or as a square, or using your corner. You get 3 dots using it in a corner, all making nice little impressions for the glaze to sit in. So that's a little favourite. These are roulettes used for centuries in pottery all over the world. And when and during the firing of a kiln, I'm often fiddling with a bit of clay to try and make another tool. This is just a round piece of clay with little marks in it, pushed in probably with a piece of wood like this. You hold it against the pot as it's going round on the wheel, and it makes a little necklace. And you just find a way to make marks to suit yourself. Okay, here are a few examples of the way I use these tools. This is a little square dish. The slip is moved away with your finger, and then I fill out one of these with the slip. And there's a nice little story attached to these, actually. Is Murray Fieldhouse, who was the editor and creator of Pottery Quarterly, the first proper pottery magazine we had, was in Moscow at the airport, and he spied a row of these on the top shelf in the airport. And he asked the young girl assistant if he could have one, and she went bright red, which he didn't really understand at the time. And she got these step ladders, and she put them up, went up on the shelf, and he pulled one down. And he said, no, I want 5. I want 5. So she went bright red again, and she went up and brought them down. And of course, they're anal douches. I don't know whether there are anal douches in England, but they certainly were in Russia. But we call them slip trailers. And so that's what we use them for. These paddles, this one, for example, the pot is thrown up to here, so you can get your hand inside, and then whacked at sort of leather hard. Little coil put around and the neck thrown on. Same with this one. Now this one is using the other paddle. This was done with a chisel. You hit that quite hard, and then the butter pat in between, all giving little different textures for the glaze to hang in and show up. This big pot here shows a variety of techniques. The little child's meat tenderizer is pressed in 3 corners there. The knife is used to do these incised marks, and then the comb to differentiate between the marks. At Jacob's cottage, I had a dog called Queenie. He was a beautiful collie. And in the morning, my habit was to get up and let the dog out, for its constitutional. But it used to shoot off into the field, I didn't know the name of the horse, I just call it Dobbin, you know. And this horse and my dog formed a lovely relationship, and they used to run around and exhaust each other. The horse would always come over and I would, you know, stroke it and nuzzle it. And one particular day, I was just looking into this horse's eyes, and I had this, again, one of these, I don't know, epiphany moments where I looked into the eyes of this horse and I thought, my God, it's no different to me. Yes, its form is different, but its life is the same as my life. And then the next thought was, I don't want any animal to die on my account or suffer on my account. And I was vegetarian from that point on. It's not a moralistic thing, but it's a question for me, is it appropriate behavior for a modern man who's supposed to be relatively compassionate, relatively civilized? And the answer for me is no, it's not appropriate behavior. But for me, the most important thing about human beings is choice. But the thing about choice is you need the information to make an informed choice. I remember watching a film on the Kalahari Bushmen. Now they haven't got a local supermarket. They can't go and buy stuff there, and so that they're in survival mode. So they have no choice about it. They have to get their protein from killing animals. And I remember watching this film of a Kalahari Bushman chasing a springbok for 8 hours. And eventually they wore the springbok down, and they came across it, and it was kneeling down, it was lying down on the ground, exhausted. Well, what they did then was the Kalahari Bushman went straight up to the springbok, he took out his spear, he dispatched the springbok straight through the heart. Now, he didn't do what a Westerner might do and say, go, yeah, and cut off its head and stick it on a wall somewhere. He actually knelt down in front of this springbok. He apologized to it for having to kill it to feed his animal. He went through some quite a long ritual, and after the apology, he thanked him for giving his life to his family. Now, I thought, God, you know, if we had that sensitivity, I mean, you see people going to McDonald's and they come out eating a burger, what thought do they have of that creature who they're eating? And so our society, I think, is completely desensitized to nature. We're disconnected from nature to life, and I think we kill unnecessarily, and a lot more thought needs to be given to it. You can hear the pot singing. Listen. That's the glaze contracting. Lovely, isn't it? A little tinkling going on. Pre-industrial country wear from almost any country has an unpretentiousness, a vitality, a suitability to purpose, and all those sort of qualities that we respond to. They were strong, they had to be strong, they were made with urgency, usually because of the demand. They had to be strong enough to be able to stack them in the kiln, and all sorts of qualities which, as a potter, you naturally respond to. You don't necessarily know you're responding to that initially, but they have an inherent integrity and a strength which somehow you have a window open in your soul to that, and you want to do that. And the way you do it initially is making things for people to use, because you want to share the feeling that you get from that with everybody else. I mean, I can remember at university going to the Fitzwilliam Museum and looking at some Sooth shower pots. Now, they weren't domestic work, they were vases with brushwork, but you were just, I mean, I was in tears at the vitality and quality of that work. And that's what you want. And you know that you've got this triangular relationship between, okay, you have this unexpressed stuff, you can see it in work that's been done in the past, and you want to be able to do that. Now, it takes years to actually be able to do that. And also, you want people to use the stuff every day. So you learn to make jugs and teapots and casseroles. It should be made such that it's nice to use, that it's not too heavy, that I think Geoffrey Whiting used to call, don't make teapots that are granny wrist breakers, you know. Make them light enough because they're holding liquid, make them comfortable, no sharp edges, make sure the lid doesn't fall out, all those sort of things, and that it pours pretty well. And you put aside pieces, and they may be on a shelf for up to 2 years before they're shown to the public. There's a great phrase Michael Cardew once said. He said, pottery is about the majesty of form. And when you think about that, form is actually all we know, you know, whether it's the form of music, the form of writing, the form of whatever. It's the form that we respond to. But the form expresses vitality, which there isn't a form for. It has to be found in a form. Hence the lovely Parama Sutra. What's it called? The Paramamitra Sutra from Buddhism. Form is emptiness, and the very emptiness is form. I absolutely love that. And, you know, so when you get something out the kiln, like we've opened this morning, that makes your heart sing, it's not because I've made it. It's nothing to do with that. It's because it actually has some quality of vitality, which will last to anybody else who has that openness, that particular window into their soul.